The US government really planning on selling a bunch of the Treasury's gold to fund a 1 million Bitcoin reserve? Well, according to this article over on Kitco News, there is at least one senator, Senator Loomis out of Wyoming, that is pushing for the sale of the Treasury's gold to fund a million Bitcoin reserve. And yes, I know I've said it twice, but you did hear that right, 1 million Bitcoin. Now that is actually a lot of money, at least it is for me and you. If you were to look at the current Bitcoin price, which at the time of this recording is sitting at $90,420, and you were to calculate that out to 1 million Bitcoin, let's just put it in here. We got one, there is 6 zeros in 1 million. That comes out to this number right here. That is $90,420,720,000. So yeah, that is a lot of money. And it's actually a lot of Bitcoin as well. There is a very finite number of Bitcoin, and that actually represents around 5% of the total amount of Bitcoin that will ever be produced. But is it a good idea? Well, today I'm going to talk about that, and keep in mind as we get into this video, many of you watching, especially if you're from the crypto crowd, should know that I am not a big fan of cryptocurrency. But even though I'm not a big crypto guy, I do recognize a few things about cryptocurrency, and I understand why some people are into it. So we're going to talk about what that means, at least from a precious metals guy's perspective, and we're going to talk about why I think it's probably not that good of an idea. So if you want to hear my thoughts and see more on this story, make sure you stick with us. But do me a favor, don't forget to first go down below and make sure you're subscribed. It really helps the channel out, and we're almost at 200,000 subscribers, and I would love for you to be one of them. Another year, another monster box of silver. For 2024, SD Bullion is giving away a full monster box of their 1-ounce silver Tree of Life coins. You can enter this giveaway all year, but I suggest that you do it now by going to sdbullion.com/sweepstakes and make sure you enter today. Thank you to SD Bullion for sponsoring my channel. So I first want to take a bit deeper of a dive into the article here. I would love to know the insight or the reason why we should sell, some of our gold reserve, something that has held value for thousands and thousands of years, something that is known to hold value around the world, something that other countries are buying in mass quantity. Why would we want to sell some of that for Bitcoin? So let's look at the article really fast. We're going to read a couple of paragraphs and see what they say here. And you can see right here it says that with the 2024 presidential election of the US now settled, Trump's allies are looking to push forward with his campaign agenda to achieve the president-elect's goal of creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Republican Senator Cynthia Loomis, which we said earlier of Wyoming, has proposed selling some of the Federal Reserve's gold to fund Bitcoin purchases. Now it says Loomis proposed a sale of gold as a way to fund proposed strategic Bitcoin stockpile without adding to the government deficit, according to a report, which by the way is behind a paywall, so we can't watch that or read it right now. But according to a report from Bloomberg, and she will look to get the measure approved at the start of new Congress in 2025. Now, one final thing I want to say right here is it does say, which I kind of already hinted at, that the bill from Loomis calls for the U.S. to acquire 1 million Bitcoin, which is 5% of the total supply, roughly. I think its end goal is 21 million Bitcoin possible at the end of the day, but there's been a bunch of them lost anyway. But which at the current prices would cost roughly 92 billion, though that figure is expected to increase. Right here, that figure is expected to increase as Bitcoin's price rises. And she is right in the fact that Bitcoin has definitely risen in price quite a bit recently. In fact, going back to the chart that we were just looking at here, you can see in 1 month's time, Bitcoin has gained 33.83%. And if we look at it on a year to date, or a 1 year, I should say, just 1 year ago it was at 36,000. Today it's gained over $53,700 since then. And look at this massive spike right here. It is all the way up to $90,000, 147% in just 1 year. And I'm not going to argue that gold and silver haven't also had massive gains in the last year. And there's a lot of volatility in gold and silver. Anyone that argues against that is nuts. It is absolutely very volatile, especially recently with silver being as low as 29 and as high as 35 in the last month. But Bitcoin's a little bit too volatile, and it's definitely a little bit too young. I mean, Bitcoin's not even 20 years old yet. We're looking at a source of wealth, something that's been looked at as a source of wealth, as a store of value for 5,000 years. And we're talking about selling that to buy something that is only been around for, not even 20 and honestly hasn't even been mainstream for anywhere close to even that long. It just doesn't make sense to me. Now, of course, there are other arguments against Bitcoin that I have, but I want to read a little bit more into the article. It goes on to say that we already have the financial assets in the form of gold certificates to convert Bitcoin, Loomis said in an interview with Bloomberg. And it also says that the proposed bill from Loomis actually goes beyond what Trump suggested. Now, this is something I want to talk about right here. He previously called for the government to use the Bitcoins it has accumulated via enforcement actions, roughly 200,000 of them, to fund the strategic reserve. Now, that is something I'm okay with. The president-elect said that he would just use the Bitcoin that we already accumulated to fund the reserve. That's fine. But to sell our gold? That doesn't make any sense to me. Now, it even says that under her plan, the government would acquire the 1 million Bitcoin, which would then hold them for a minimum of 20 years with the presumed appreciation in value to be utilized to help reduce the national debt. Now, how much do they expect the value to increase? Well, if we scroll down here, it says during an interview with Bloomberg Television, a noted crypto bull, Michael Novogratz, CEO of Galaxy Digital, said he sees a low likelihood that the U.S. will set up a Bitcoin strategic reserve, which I kind of agree with. And I do disagree with this bill that she's proposing. But he says if it does happen to be created, he predicted that it would drive the price of Bitcoin to $500,000 per token, since other nations would feel compelled to follow suit. Now, if it went to $500,000 per coin after we acquire the 1 million, assuming that we're buying it at 90,000 right now, let's say we spent 90 billion and it turned into 500 billion. No argument, that's a good amount of money. But let's take a look at our current debt. Yikes, $36 trillion. So what you're saying is that we would be looking at maybe 1/72nd, however you pronounce that, 1/72 of our national debt, like not even 2%. Not even 2% of the national debt that 500 billion would be. And if we go to our time machine here on this debt clock, we just fast forward 4 years. Let's go to 2028, $50.92 trillion. And this is just in 4 years' time. If we go on the path that we're already on and look at our federal budget deficit, the deficit's going to balloon to $4.474 trillion. I mean, that's $500 billion right there. Even if you were to just knock it off of the deficit for 1 year, we're still in the hole $4 trillion a year. And this is just 4 years. So let's say Bitcoin does go to $500,000 per coin in 4 years' time after we accumulate 1 million Bitcoin. It's not even going to knock us under $50 trillion the way that we're going right now. So in reality, it's not going to make a very big difference, is it? I mean, that's not a lot of money. I mean, it's a lot of money to be in you. I mean, it's an astronomical amount of money to an individual like you and I, but to the government, to the U.S. government, that's not a whole lot of money. I mean, our deficit spending is absolutely insane. And like I just showed you on the debt clock, if we continue increasing the amount of money that we spend, if our deficit spending continues to balloon, we're going to be at $4.5 trillion deficit spending in just 4 years. I mean, even if you were to knock that 500,000 off, like I said when we were looking at the chart, that's not a big deal. But what I will say is that I actually kind of agree with that crypto bull in that article. Because right here, he said, I'm going to read this again. He says, if it does happen to be created, he predicted that it would drive, let me highlight it again, would drive the price of Bitcoin to $500,000 per token, since other nations would feel compelled to follow suit. I actually do agree with that, because if the government did do this, I do think that other nations would follow suit, and it also would create more demand for individuals to try and get Bitcoin themselves, and alternatively, it would actually lower the supply. I mean, there is a maximum of 21 million Bitcoin, right? And there's even less than that because of so many of them have been lost already. So yeah, lowering the supply and increasing the demand for it is going to increase the price. So if the government did do this, if you're holding Bitcoin, probably a good opportunity to make a lot of money. If I were to get into Bitcoin because of this, and I'm not going to, just so you know, but if I were, I would probably cash out, after it doubled or tripled, and then just put it back into gold and silver. Because unlike Bitcoin, that drains resources, that will continue to drain resources, that will always be dependent on draining our energy, on having access to the internet, so on and so forth, just for it to exist. That's not the same with gold and silver. I mean, it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of resources to mine and refine gold and silver, but once it's in your hand, it's in your hand. It's physical, it's something that you can hold, and it's something that's been treasured for 5,000 years. It has been looked at as money for just as long, and in my opinion, will continue to be so. I don't know. Let me know what you think with a comment down below. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Do you think that this is something the government should do? Should they not do it? I would love to know. So let me know with a comment, guys. Don't forget to subscribe on your way out. Hit that like button as well if you like this video, and we'll see you next time.